question line. She wants to know if we started. I think everyone's on start.
Okay, the meeting is being recorded. We are live.
Someone's can find who that is. All right, we will call this special meeting of the Board of Finance to order. It is 7:17 on Tuesday, February 23rd. I'll do a quick roll call of Board of Finance members. Myself, Tim O'Brien, and Glenn Frischman are in attendance in the meeting room here. Mike Fauerbach, you up?
I'm here.
Lynn Young, I don't see.
Are you muted?
Bob Stachin, are you on? I don't see you.
Yeah.
Okay. No Bob. Deb Norman?
I'm here.
And Dave Motherway is on. I got a message from him that he's got some connectivity, but he's not in here. Oh, you
I'm on,
okay.
Tim. I'm on.
Perfect. Perfect. Good. In addition, Jim Sullivan and Jill Senior, you are both on?
Jim Sullivan's on.
Yep, I'm here as well.
Perfect. All right. So we have called the meeting to order. First order of business is budget presentations. And I will remind everyone to mute their mics if they are not presenting so that we only have one person talking. And I will remind Board of Finance members, this is the opening presentations for the 2021-2022 budget cycle. We are right now getting information. We are not making any adjustments or requests to change anything at this point. We're getting the information. So just a reminder as to what the purpose of these meetings currently are. And with that, I will turn it over to the WPCA and Doug.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can hear you just great here in the conference room, Doug, and that's Mike Fauerbach. If I can ask of you, if you are having trouble hearing it online, can you make sure that we know that there's some issue, because we're hearing it fine here in the conference room.
No, Doug's coming through loud and clear. I'll let you know if we have any issues.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Yep, you're good, Doug.
All right. Good evening. I'm here to present my municipal budget for the WPCA. This is actually the budget for running the office at Town Hall. Pretty much covers all the expenses that we incur operating the office, which includes our 2 clerical workers. Actually, it's one half. I split a clerk or admin with the building official's office. So you have 1.5 salaries under this budget. The rest of the items listed are pretty much basic expenditures, and there have not been any significant changes in this budget, except for, and I almost feel guilty asking for this because you guys have been so good about getting me bonding money, and I really do appreciate that. But the bonding money does not help my operation expenditures in the operating budget. So I've asked that the $250,000 be increased to $300,000, and that was under the operations of the town share. Just to give you an idea, this operating budget that we have for the WPCA, I had to take $254,000 from our, what I call our rainy day fund account, to help balance that operating budget, just so that you see the need is there to have this extra $50,000 back in this budget. I'll leave it. That's pretty much my presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to take them at this time.
Any members of the Board of Finance have any questions? And I'll ask that you please remember to state your name. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, Mike Fauerbach here. So thanks, Doug. Doug, I guess one of the things that would be helpful is to see the additional operating expenses. I mean, all that we can really see here, is the, the salaries at, what, about 86,000, and the other miscellaneous expenses at almost 17,000. So we're seeing 100K of expense, but then that request for the subsidy at 300K. So it would be useful to see, what are those other elements of your operating budget that are driving that request to increase back to the 300K level. Is that something you can get to us, in coming weeks?
I certainly can. I would present the operating budget, which is, like I said, this is the municipal side of the of the operations. I also have an operating budget, and you don't have that, obviously, and I'll make sure that you do get that, so you can see some of the expenses that drive those costs.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions from Board of Finance members? Nope. All right. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it.
Was I supposed to present my CIP as well?
I thought, yes.
Well, you're all in luck. I don't have one. So you won't have to listen to any more sewer stuff. Like I said, I do appreciate the bond money that we've gotten, and we're off and running with that and making the repairs that we need to make, and doing whatever we can to keep things moving along.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Director Miller.
Go ahead, Mr. Frischman.
Doug, the I&I study, have you found any source of the intrusion?
We're working on it, but as you know, last summer was very dry. So the meters went in the manholes in late May, and I was told by DEP that if we kept them in there during the dry period, our chances of forgetting any grant money for this program will go out the window. So we pulled the meters. Now it's gotten wet again, and we're hopeful that the meters will go in the ground next month in March.
Great. Because it's coming from someplace.
Yes, sir. It certainly is.
Any other questions or comments, Board of Finance members? All right. Thank you very much, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we will move on to general government and the general government SIP. And with that, I will turn it over to the first selectman.
Thank you so much. We'll try and be as brief as we can, because we know this is just the start of month of budget presentation. So if you want to start with, I believe it's page 18.
Sorry, Danielle. I'm sorry, it's we're having a tough time hearing Danielle.
Oh, of course. I'm sorry.
Danielle, why don't you come up over here? Retake your seat over here.
I just love my seat.
I know.
Sorry, Mike. Thank you.
Is that better, Mike?
Can you hear me better?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, good. So I believe it's page 18 of the first selectman's budget. This one is pretty straightforward, so I thought, and hopefully you've all had time to go through all the commentary at the start, but I would highlight maybe just the two more significant changes. But of course, if you have any questions on this page, just let me know. The tree warden stipend, I recommended to increase by $1,000. It's two people who split this work up. They're currently and have been paid $2,000. I'm suggesting it go to $3,000 so they could each get $1,500. They respond weekly to calls. And I think both with the increase of storms that we've been having, as well as just the disease that we've been seeing sadly in a lot of our older trees, they have been very heavily utilized. And I would say this does not probably even cover their gas expenses for the year, although one of our tree wardens tries to ride her bike whenever possible. But so this, to me, is a moderate request for the work that they do, and just really to cover some of their costs. And the other increase I wanted to highlight is the Mystic River Park. This was a request from the Mystic River Park to us. We had a meeting with DPW. They thought they could potentially help cover some of the requests, which has to do with increased cleaning of the bathrooms, particularly in the summer, as well as increased garbage pickup. DPW already picks up the garbage, but due to the heavy use of the park this summer, there was additional need for that, and obviously because of COVID, the cleaning, but also just the increased heavy use of the park. They don't expect that to go down this summer, so this could be seen as, at least for now, a one-time request. Obviously, they could come back in the future and continue to advocate for it, but for this summer, they were looking for this additional help. And again, they wanted to kind of manage it themselves the way they've been doing it, so that's where they came up with this $9,391 increase for your guys' consideration. Any other questions on on that first page?
Hi, it's Mike. Danielle, thanks. Can you just clarify, so if we do honor that request and go with that increase, which is almost double what we've spent in the past there, how does that change the town's proportion towards the overall, what is our contribution relative to the chamber's contribution at that point?
That's a great question. We can circle back with Ben Tansky and the other members of the Mystic River Park. I believe in their request, they really did more of an outline, just going back to it, of just the use of the park. I don't believe they broke down figures of who else contributes or where they get funding from. So we can circle back and after that and share it before the next meeting.
Okay, thanks. And then just one other one while I've got the floor is, you didn't mention it, but row or line 16 seat, I mean, it's relatively minor, you know, the increase.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that. It's actually just a typo error. It's the same as last year. Last year was 25,924. It just got entered, just a small incorrect. We're actually still waiting for seat to get back to us. We believe hopefully it will be level funded again this year, but they actually haven't responded as of right now to our budget request. They're just still trying to finalize their own audit.
Madam First Selectman,
Yep.
does the town of Groton contribute to the upkeep of the park because the tourists cross the bridge?
Oh, for the Mystic River Park?
Yes.
That's an excellent question. I will ask them.
Because we have all the parking in Stonington, but I know tourists are going across the bridge.
We have the nice green space. No, I'll ask them if Groton contributes, and also,
sure they'd
like Mike
like to
said, their
help.
breakdown of funding from other sources.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions from Board of Finance members on that section? Nope. All right, go ahead.
So the next one, Waterfront Commission. This was a request put in by their chair to increase the clerical allotment. As I understand it, the person doing their kind of admin does, in addition to the note-taking, also does kind of their minutes and agendas and does, you know, a bit extra for them and assist them. So they put in this request for your consideration, like $275 extra a year. Not substantial, but I did want to note it. The Pawcatuck River Harbor Management hopefully will meet again one day, but for now they're just flat. And Shellfish Commission does amazing work, and they barely ask for anything, so that's pretty straightforward. The EDC, I'll pause for any questions, but they provided a pretty extensive overview of all their work and potential projects, and I thought it was also very considerate of them. They actually, through their own voluntary action, decreased their budget by $5,000 just in light of everything happening with the pandemic and finances for businesses and residents around town. Any questions on the EDC? If not, just to say they do great work, and I'm sure Sue Cohen can talk to this when she goes, but there really are these members and volunteers of this commission, as well as others, are the reason we can get so much done in town with the more limited staffing we have compared to other towns. Our EDC has been noted from our surrounding towns on some joint projects as sort of the gold standard, so they really do a tremendous amount of work. And we get a good ROI off of them, I would say. The Stonington Facilities Committee, again, this whole page here is pretty flat until you get to the Charter Revision Commission. I wanted to highlight this. This was a suggestion, and for those of you who have more experience with this, happy to hear your feedback. But we thought instead of having the clerical services at 1,800, we would put in a new line for a project administrator at 4,000. We understand from other people who served on the charter revision commissions in the past, this is a heavy lift, and oftentimes it falls on town hall staff to do a tremendous amount of work, and they really just can't quite take something like this on. So the idea would be to bring on a project administrator who would do both the clerical services as well as more of the project management of the group. And this would potentially be something that would come in the next budget cycle. So we put it there if we do choose to open the charter, as has been discussed in the past.
If I may ask.
Yes, you may.
Charter revision is generally an ad hoc event. It's not a regularly scheduled budget item, because it doesn't happen every budget season. So wouldn't it make more sense to, out of technical services, should it be deemed that that is a necessary help, rather than creating a budget law, that would better be served out of technical services, because it's an ad hoc nature.
Jim could speak to this. It was in last year's budget, but again, that might have been an oversight. Jim, do you want to speak to this at all?
Well, it wasn't last year's budget, but that was the first time it wasn't in the budget. In the past, it was just taken on really on a volunteer basis, I believe. So we were trying to show some consideration to the people who actually, provided their time at 18,000 for 2021, which nothing ever got off the ground. So, and then we had the conversation you just mentioned about, the last go around. I understand it was very involved, and yet at the same time, it was very few issues that were being considered. And at this point, I think it's anticipated that this go around might have a deeper, wider scope, so that's why the consideration was given towards maybe making this a $4,000 and assigning a project administrator to it.
To Mr. Frischman's point, would there be an objection if we put it back in the first selectman's budget, line 13, townwide technical and professional services?
You mean bump that up by 4,000,
Yeah.
or just? I have no objection to my point. From my standpoint, we could earmark it. So.
Not necessarily going to have a charter revision commission.
Yep, and I guess we could earmark it with that note that you cannot spend that $4,000 if the charter revision doesn't happen.
Right.
Or somebody should come back to the Board of Finance and request the money.
We're a very amenable board. Listen to rational requests.
Do other members have thoughts on making it a dedicated?
But given that, I would think that we would want it earmarked under its own, so it isn't just spent without consideration for why technical services went over.
I could see both sides.
I could spend it on a lot of trees or.
For now, why don't we leave it where it is?
Okay.
I'll go.
Because we're having the discussion, and as we
Right.
deliberate
As we
some more,
distill the budget
as we distill
further.
it, we can look at whether that moves somewhere else or what we do.
That's very fair.
You
Thank
can
you.
always take it on the first selectman's salary.
I'm not gonna do that.
Mike, I just have a quick question. Does this go, is funding somewhat of a determining factor as to whether or not this moves forward or not, or what?
I would say, again, this is just my opinion, but I would not support opening the charter without having at least some dedicated administrative expense to this, just the understanding of how much work it was last time and just how, I'd say, quite honestly, just not quite, overworked. I think that's fair. Most town hall staff are. I can't see them being able to take this on fairly. So to me, I don't think we should be opening the charter if we don't have some money set aside to support the likely 18-month process that this will take.
All right, thank you. That's helpful.
Other questions from board members? No? All right.
Okay. Emergency management is also pretty straightforward. I don't know if there's any questions on that. not.
Nope. Keep going.
Elections are also very straightforward. Any questions there?
The only question I had as I looked at this, and given what we've had for the last election, the town clerk and everyone is good with this. I mean, with the expanded that we offered, the state offered some monies this last time. I just want to make sure that if the election happened in the same manner, the clerk and everyone feels we're good with this budget.
Jim could jump in here as well, but last time, I think between the state and then we also applied for additional grant assistance, we'd be hopeful, I think if the same expectation was required of us, those would still be available, but it's a fair point. If we had to go through what we went through last time, we'd need to come back to the Board of Finance if grants weren't available, but it won't be a presidential election and a
Right.
lot of other factors.
What, just so that we've got it in the back of our head, roughly, could you, in the next couple of weeks, could you let us know what the state and grants, what that dollar value was, so that we know the order of magnitude that we're looking at?
It was about Jim Sullivan, I'm sorry. It was about $14,000 we received in non-governmental and governmental grants.
Thank
Okay.
you, Jim. Okay, if no other questions, I'll go to the town clerk. And again, fairly straightforward budget. The changes you see, if you guys have questions on them, most have actually gone down, which I know you like to see, but any questions on the town clerk? All right, if not,
So the salary line, I will ask the question.
yes.
The salary line is increasing 2.7%.
Everybody.
But we may have,
That's the thing, I mean, that's the same COLA for everyone.
for a new hire, it still goes up by the 2.7?
If there is a new hire, we have to look at what the starting salary would be for that person. It would
This
likely
is
be less. It
assuming-
would likely be.
Yeah.
This is assuming continuity of employees.
Yeah.
That was, I guess that's a better way to ask my question.
Tim, this is Jim Sullivan. I'd like to note, actually, the clerical salary line 98, that's going to increase by $3,308 because one of the clerical staffs was designated as a deputy town clerk, and that bump in salary with that designation wasn't in the initial salary figure right there. So that number, it will go up from 114 to 300, excuse me, to 117,006.
Okay, hang on. So that's rising an additional what did you say, Jim?
3308
3308.
to 117,699.
Okay.
Right. If you guys are good, I think admin is next, and I'll come back to help a little bit with planning.
I'll come sit up here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for the Board of Finance members who may have not met her, Patty Bermal is our Director of Administrative Services who will be presenting this. And it is her first budget go-round with the town of Stonington, so.
So be nice.
So be nice, Glenn.
I'm in a very amenable mood tonight.
You are.
Good to know.
You always are.
So
Hi,
the
Jim.
Department of Administrative Services has three,
Hang on one second, Patty.
Sorry.
Mike, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Tim. I just, I know we transitioned there, but there was one other line there that I was going to ask a question of Danielle. The payment to the borough of Stonington went down. Can we get maybe a little context on that, or is that something she's going to comment on later?
Jim, can you actually take that one?
I can, Mike, that's formulaic. It's just it's a factor of public works expenditures, including SIP expenditures, because the highway department doesn't provide highway services to the borough. So based on road miles and sidewalk miles within the borough, that's used as a factor to the of total highway department expenditures, and they're giving credit towards that for the services that they're not receiving. So that whether it goes up or not is totally a factor, whether it goes up or down, excuse me, is a total factor of dollars expended in the highway department budget and the SIP budget. If they go up, that contribution goes up. If they go down, that contribution goes down. And it's a lagging change. So this is based off of the 21-22 number. Contribution is actually based off of 19-20 figures.
Okay, thanks. Dave. Now that you mentioned it, it's all coming back to me now, so thank you for reminding me.
So moving to Department of Administrative Services, there's 3 buckets to our department. One is the administration group, one is information technology, and Roger's going to have to play a dual role in the meeting when we get to that. And then the last one is human resources. So I will start with the first one, which is administration. It is pretty straightforward. It's just a lot of the operations of not only the human resources department, but also the administrative support for the first selectman. You'll see that finance broke out salaries a little differently. Instead of putting them in one bucket, they broke them out separately. But most of the other expenses in here are just kind of general operating expenses, supplies, you know, HRIS systems, copies, furniture. So no major changes in this grouping. So any questions on any item in here?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, moving on to information technology. So a couple of changes in information technology, and the main one is we are looking for an additional resource, an additional technology support specialist, which is primarily to support the police department. So this has been an ongoing, I know there's been discussions the past couple of years on this. Right now, I will say that Roger is trying to do 2 or 3 jobs. The police department technology needs are growing and growing. The more legislation that comes, the more technology needs we have. We have strong alignment between the police department and the chief and my department and Roger in terms of what this position should be. So it is not a very senior level, it's a technology support specialist. That position will report to Roger, but will be dedicated to the police department. So that is one of the changes here, the biggest one. The other one relates to the bandwidth in town hall and telecommunications. So if you look at town hall and you've been in town hall, the internet bandwidth and related performance is not optimal, and we need to make some improvements in that. Anyone who comes to town hall probably knows that pretty quickly when you come into town hall. So Roger's done research on that, and that will require an additional $9,000 a year to improve our bandwidth upgrade for town hall. And I guess what I would ask Roger to do is we do have some slides that we sent out to the Board of Finance, especially on the support position. And I'd ask Roger to maybe walk through those.
Let me share my screen here. So we all know we've been adding a lot of infrastructure to the town in general, human services, highway garage, town hall, and the police department. The police department has had a larger focus in the last couple of years because of several mandates that they have had come their way. We all know that there's body cameras coming, in-car cameras, and a whole host of other technology-related hurdles that they're going to have to jump through, and they're not going to be able to do it by themselves. Currently, with the existing staff, there's just not enough of us to do everything that needs to be done, as well as all the other day-to-day maintenance of the systems. It just gets more and more and more as the years go on. Constant, network security, network upkeep, software, it's a lot. We currently have 5 separate major departments, if you include town hall, police department, public works garage, the transfer station, which we also support, and human services. A lot of computers, a lot of area that 2 people have to cover whenever go badly for us. This is just a highlight of some of the software and technologies that we deal with on a daily basis. Vision appraisal, Tyler Munis financial system, quality data, top resolution for the town clerk's office, Central Square IMC, dispatch and records management for the police department. You all know the simple ones, Microsoft Office, the Exchange server, SQL databases. We all know a little bit about that stuff, and when we need some expertise, we need to have the people to assist us with that. We just replaced all of our network switch infrastructure, which is great. We're poised for a good, solid backbone for our network across the town. So we need to know our network Cisco operating systems, our data backup, our VMware virtual server infrastructure. It all ties together. Sonic wall, firewall intrusion detection, Sophos antivirus, that's also cloud-based at this time, and everything else you see on the list there. There's so much more beyond what you see in this slide that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Currently, we're set up as 2 people, IT manager and a technology support specialist, and I'm playing a dual and sometimes triple role by dealing with level 1 and level 2 support for all users. I'm decision maker for a lot of technology needs that we have in the town, and all of the current heads, all of the software vendors that are available that we need to sort things out with. The proposed new system, we have a second technology support specialist. And the goal here is to not be completely focused on the police department. The goal would be, yes, to have that person here to deal with the day-to-day operations of the police department. However, our current technology support specialist, Ann Louise Mazza, has been here before. She is trained in what the police department has for our software and can assist if needed. The goal is to have both these people cross-trained. So that way it takes the burden off of us when there's one person out, say there's a vacation going on, or if we have to double up somewhere for some other issue we have going on. So the focus is, yes, at the police department, but with the eye on being able to assist in any area of town. And Patty has done quite a bit of research with like-sized communities that have IT staffing and what their levels are. And as you can see in the slide, and many of you have this at home, they all have at least one IT director or somebody who supervises IT staff, and 2, sometimes 3 technology support specialists that work in the field to address any issues that may come up.
Thanks, George. I think you covered a lot of it. And I can also just add to that, one of the other focus areas, in addition to IT security and things like that for the town, we're looking to try to automate. We're really trying to automate. We're trying to get rid of paper. We're trying to do a lot of projects like that. We're trying to do things like online permitting. Anytime we have a project like that, Roger is the only person who's been involved in any one of those projects. And I think we're going to be focused much more in the future on automation, on doing things online, and on moving to different platforms, and that's going to put a lot more pressure, I think, on the IT department.
There's several areas in Town Hall right now, at the Police Department, Human Services, that aren't being addressed on a regular basis. I mean, vision appraisal software, that's pretty much focused for the assessment department. So the assessor can take the lead when it comes to changes in decision-making for this software. Same goes with quality. Same goes with top resolution, the clerk. When it comes to GIS, or document management, that really has a hand in multiple departments, not singular ones. So it's not really a singular department head who champions these items. So it falls to somebody else. Well, I can handle it. It's not above what I can do. I'm currently too busy to do. There's so much more our GIS can do, and right now we're right in the middle of trying to replace a large format copier machine into an existing space that's way too small, and I'm project manager and trying to make sure we get Public Works involved, Chris Greenlaw, our town engineer. We're designing space. We're trying to do it right from the ground up. We know we're going to be in that building for a while. That's just one small example of the things that I'm doing for multiple departments. And I can do a lot more of that if I have another technology support specialist that can focus on the day-to-day level 1 and level 2 break fix for this end of town.
Yeah, and one last thing I would just add is that you have in here a letter from Chief Stewart. He's very aligned on the level of the position we need and the role, and very supportive. We've had a number of meetings to make sure we have full alignment about what we're looking for and the type of support, and the police department and Chief Stewart are fully supportive of this, and they very much see the need for that.
I have met personally with the chief a number of times, and I can't concur more with HB 6004, now a reality. You know, the technology about body cameras, dash cameras, preparing testimony or recalling data under subpoena, where you've got to edit only the particular people out. That's massive.
So open to any questions?
Any questions for Roger or Patty on this?
It's Mike, just a comment and thanks to Roger. I mean, I thought his slides were very comprehensive. I really appreciated the benchmarking and to put it into context. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anything else on information technology? Okay, with that, I will move to human resources. I'll highlight a few things on here, and there's a few things that have been updated since the slides you received. So I'll kind of go through. One thing you'll just note on here is we just flipped labor negotiations and labor council, the same total amount. We will start the labor negotiations probably a year from now for the next collective bargaining agreements. So we would expect the labor negotiation line to be higher as we get into the second half of next fiscal year. And so I just will highlight that. A lot of the other things, pension plan is calculated through our actuary, so some of those contributions are based on the actuarial calculations. You will see an increase to the pension plan defined contribution 401A plan. The reason for that increase is increase in salaries, and all new hires now go into that plan. So as we hired a number of people over the past year, all of those people are we no longer put people into our defined benefit plan, the retirement plan, and they all go into the 401A plan. So that's the reason why that line item is higher. It's a straight calculation on the current salaries of the people in the plan. The other thing I will highlight is accrued leave payout. We have reduced that. So accrued leave payout is when people retire or leave, they get paid out for up to 80 sick days for the collective bargaining agreement. And most of the time, people end up getting paid out 80 sick days when they leave. Last fiscal year, we were aware of a number of retirements. I'm aware of potentially a couple coming up in the next fiscal year, so we would certainly expect more retirements coming up in the next fiscal year. So we did reduce that, but we also wanted to keep it at an amount that we think will cover people that may retire in the next fiscal year. I will highlight the health insurance. So when I initially worked with, we have a new benefits broker, it's Brown & Brown. It's the same benefits broker the Board of Ed uses, which is actually very helpful. It's unclear to me how we had two benefits brokers on the same plan prior to this, but as of July 1st, the town now uses Brown & Brown as our benefits broker. When I worked with them back in December on the budget, we put on a budget that was flat. I do monitor the town's healthcare expenses on a weekly and monthly basis, so I look at all of our invoices, all of our expenses, because I want to see trends as we're a self-insured plan. In December and January, I saw a spike in our expenses for a couple of months. I did ask Brown & Brown 2 weeks ago to go back and relook at everything based on 2 months of data, and as a result, we're making an increase to that of $54,000. The new line item will be $2,050,000, so it's a 2.71% increase, and that's just being conservative to make sure we cover healthcare expenses. I am hopeful that the trend I've seen the past couple of months is just an anomaly with a couple of high claims we have, and I'll continue to monitor the health insurance. One other change is on the life insurance. We did find out that when Brown & Brown renegotiated with our vendor for that, they did not factor in that 2 of our collective bargain agreements have an increase in life insurance effective July 1st, 2021. They did not factor that in. I spoke to them today, and they think that line item may go up 4% to $28,385 from $27,400, but I'm waiting to get final confirmation from them, hopefully this week on that. So That or those items, and the only other item I want to highlight is there is a new line item, and it's diversity, equity, and inclusion training and community outreach. So the first selectman has put in place the diversity, equity, and inclusion working group, an internal working group from internal town staff. We've been focused on looking at training, looking at what other towns are doing, looking how we might do community outreach. And we felt it's important to put a small amount of money in there to try to do some training, not just for town staff, but also we might want to do training for the community. So for some of the Chamber of Commerce's nonprofits in the town. And when you look at diversity, equity, and inclusion training, generally a 3-hour training session with some of the reputable trainers is around $2,500. So we have done some training this fiscal year, and I was able to find money to do it this year because a lot of the on-site, off-site training programs that people go to were all canceled due to COVID. So normally we have town staff that go to planning conferences, assessor conferences. Obviously all those conferences were canceled this year, so I was able to take some of the money from that this year to do some diversity, equity, and inclusion training for some board members as well as town staff. But we are looking to try to do more with that in the next fiscal year, and so we are looking for $7,500 in order to support that work, not only in terms of training, but in terms of community outreach. So with all of that, I will open it up to any questions.
Any questions from members?
Hi, it's Mike. Thanks. I do have a couple of clarifying questions. So I thought on row 58, you were indicating that health insurance was going up. In our book, we've got it flat, at least my version. Do we just have old data, or were you speculating that would go up, or is the actual request for an increase?
So, Mike, what Patty said was that there were some recent claims that were in the December-January timeframe that were some larger claims, and because we're self-insured, they took a look at it again after our books were printed. And to be conservative, based on the current claims, that was recommended to increase that after our books were printed.
So can you tell me what would the new number then be, so I can pencil in?
The new number is it goes up by 54,000, which is 2.7%. So the new number is 2,050,000.
Okay. All right, thanks.
And being self-insured, they obviously do a look back, and when you add those two higher months in there, it resulted in an increase. And then we looked at the Anthem allocation rates as well.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And then just back on the accrued leave payout, row 56. So yeah, certainly appreciate you taking a closer look, and it looks like there's an opportunity to reduce it there by 30K. What about for the current fiscal year? The budget was 150K. It still has the projected actual at 150K. So where do you expect it to come in for the year, or is there favorability?
I expect it to come in probably closer maybe to 100K, and potentially, unless there is a retirement or a termination that I'm not aware of. So, obviously, the ones I'm aware of, it looks like it'd be around 100K. But if we were having a resignation or a retirement between now and the end of the year, I don't know about it, could go higher.
Are all bargaining units covered by this payout clause, or just some of the bargaining?
All of the bargain units are
And
covered.
the maximum number of days, say again, please?
The maximum amount you can get paid out is 80.
80 days?
Yes. And this doesn't include the police. So the police have something called 8-day payout that's covered in their budget, that's separate.
But excuse me, this is Jim Sullivan. The 80 days is just sick time. That doesn't include vacation.
Only sick time.
That's a point to negotiate.
It's pretty, interestingly, it's pretty standard in a lot of collective bargaining areas.
Good.
So even if the current forecast for this year is closer to 100K, and again, I understand there could be, it could creep up, but so even if we're looking at 120 next year, I mean, that's maybe a slight increase then over the current fiscal year. It sounds like maybe there's even a little more wiggle room there.
There may be.
And Mike, this is Jim Sullivan again. I would just like to know if there is any money left in the current year budget, my plan is to exhaust that account, take that money and transfer it out to a reserve account we have in a special revenue fund to set it aside to, we already have a fund there for accrued compensated absences. We budget, in the past, we've always budgeted 25,000 annually. We've had some occasions where it's run over that. So we built a reserve in a different fund as well as the Board of Ed. So when we have extraordinary claims, we have a reserve fund to dip into as well.
Okay, so that, yeah, it sounds like then that fund is gonna get an increase again at the end of the current fiscal year. So yeah, maybe there's even more flexibility than the 30 that's indicated here. But again, we'll take it one step at a time, but try to head around the numbers.
Any other questions from members?
Okay, I do have actually one more page, which is kind of an all other page. So, so the next page, the health officer and sanitation is under my department. And as many of you know, probably 3 or 4 years ago, the town moved to Ledge Life Health District. And Ledge Life Health District. So Ledge Life Health District is looking at, we're looking at a 3.6% increase this year, and I can kind of go through and explain that for you. It's a combination of a per capita per resident increase of 3%, and then our population went up slightly. They pull population data from Department of Health, so they show that we have a population increase. So Ledge Life Health District has not had an increase in their per capita rate for the past 3 years. They have kept their rates flat. This year they are giving us an increase, and it's 3%, and it's primarily driven by the additional headcount they've needed to hire to support the COVID pandemic. And I will say, being a customer of them, they have been phenomenal throughout this entire pandemic. They have been supportive. They have driven the data, the information, the vaccines. They have shared information from municipalities back to the state. I can't speak highly enough of the work they've done around the pandemic. So that is the primary driver for the increase in their budget. And again, they have not had a per capita increase the past. So that was that item. And then the other last item, and Sue can probably talk more about it, but there's a community development clerical salary line item that's always sat in my department's budget. It's actually, with Sue being here now, she's the one who really leverages that. It's not going up. But what that is, it's usually used for an intern to help with a lot of the grant applications, which are very laborsome, complicated, in-depth processes. And so we use part-time temporary interns to help with that. In addition to helping with our submission for sustainable CT. So we're not looking for any increase, but I just wanted to mention what the purpose of that line item was. I'll take any questions on those two.
Any questions from the members? Nope.
Having none, I will depart.
Well, hold on. You still have to do SIP. For general operations.
Forgot about SIP. I'm sorry. Okay, there are 2 SIP items, and I'll let Roger speak to the first one, which is town hall security cameras.
Okay, as we all know, our town hall cameras are in a state of failing. They're old. They're the network media recorder is.
Sorry, Roger. It's hard to hear you. Roger, sorry, it's Mike. It's hard to hear you.
I'll speak up. How's that?
And Roger, what page are you on, please?
I don't know where the SIP is. It's
92.
Thank you.
I think, no, hang on, that's their first page. 93. Yeah, 93. Sorry, Deb.
Thanks.
So quick, can you hear me now? Is that good?
Yeah, it's all right.
Okay.
We can turn the volume up on this side.
As we talked about in the past, the video camera security system at Town Hall is very old. The network video recorder is also very old. It's not very long for its life, end of life, as a matter of fact, well past it. So we've gotten a couple of quotes to replace the systems. That's why we're asking for the $19,500. That kind of dovetails with a couple of the quotes that I've gotten to replace the existing cameras in Town Hall and to add a few extras inside inside town hall and outside of town hall, so we can cover some of the parking areas and the walking spaces out there. With the new network infrastructure we've just put in at town hall, highway garage, and human services, we'll be able to expand those locations as well. I've already had the back-end networking programmed when we put the new switches in. So if we choose to add new cameras or the public works garage, it'll be just a matter of running cameras. Very simple. But the hard lift is going to be town hall. It's a difficult building to work with. Running cable through that building is going to be difficult because of the nature of some of the office spaces. Vendors that chosen believe that we can do it without making any mess, without having to create a hazmat situation.
Are we looking at page 92?
93.
93, line 13, townwide surveillance camera program?
I think line 3.
Line 3, video security, phase 1.
That's the 19.5 Roger's talking about.
Anybody have a question or comment?
How many cameras in town hall?
Currently, there's 5 cameras in town hall internally looking for the doors outside. We're looking to replace those 5, add at least 5 more internally to cover hallways on the 3rd floor as well. Another one downstairs and one on the main floor. And then cameras pretty much outside every corner of the building to cover all the access and parking lots.
So 14 cameras.
At least, yes.
Hi, Mike, a quick question for Roger. What's the projected useful life of those cameras once you got installed?
That's a very good question. I have to double check with our vendor, and it depends on the type of camera we have. The internal ones would be capable of lasting at least 5 to 10 years, if not a little bit longer due to being inside. External cameras, maybe a little less because of the weather, lightning strike, UV, what have you. But they're going to be more expensive because they're going to be external, try to be a bit more robust. I can find that out for you, see what the life expectancy for the internal and external cameras are for you.
Thanks, I was just curious too, or if you spend a little bit more, can you double the life, or just trying to? So I'm not an expert in the video technology here, so just trying to understand, making sure that we're spending the right amount of money to get the appropriate longevity out of these cameras.
I completely understand. I'm like you. It's a new area of technology. I'm learning. I know they can connect to our network. They grab their power over Ethernet, just like our phone systems do, and many other devices, like our Wi-Fi here at the police department. So they interface well with our network. But again, I don't know their life expectancy, but I'll follow up with you on that.
All right, thank you.
But
Roger,
you are doing wired, correct? So they're over Ethernet, power over Ethernet.
That's correct. And the existing cameras in town hall are coax cable.
Yep.
Which we can, from the learn that you can connect it to our system, run power over coax,
yep,
and still get the cameras, new cameras, to run on the old cable. So we'll probably leverage that as well.
So we may be able to do less.
Roger, it's Deb. No, can I just ask a quick question? Is it live? Does it go right to the police department?
That is the goal. It's going to record, well, depending on the system we choose. And if we choose a classic system where we have a network video recorder in town hall, it'll have an IP address like any server on our network. The video can then be fed into the police department and they can view it there. So yes, that is the goal.
Thanks.
And I did experiment with another system where they typically do cloud only. They upload straight to the cloud. So they can be wireless, they can be wired, or over Ethernet, however you want to do it. We don't buy it, but we have to buy for storage in the cloud. That also comes with another trade-off. We have to have the bandwidth to export tons of video out of the organization. And we already have a bandwidth problem. Doesn't make sense to go that route right now. And to get back to your question, Mr. Frischman, that's why it may cost a little bit more, is because of the cameras on site we needed, the extra cabling, and the capacity of the network video recorder.
Right. Security is important.
Other questions from board members?
Okay, there is one other line, SIP item, which is line number 6, and that would be mine, and that's Americans with Disabilities Act Accessibility for Town Facilities. The reason this is under my department is because I'm the ADA coordinator for the town. So the town has not done facility self-assessments for our 3 main facilities, police, human services, or town hall in the past few years, as best I can tell. We need to do those self-assessments over the next couple of months. They're a lot more detailed than they used to be in terms of what you have to go measure and check to make sure your facility is accessible. And we put this money in SIP in order to make any changes or corrections. I don't think this would cover all the changes we need to make, but we wanted to put some money in so we could make any upgrades that we need to make our facilities more accessible. I believe Town Hall is probably the one that is in most need of updates and changes from an accessibility perspective. So for that reason, we have put in $25,000 to try to cover any of those changes we need to make our facilities accessible. The police is a newer building, probably more accessible. Human services may have some things we need to look at, but it's really Town Hall where we're going to need to probably focus.
So this 25,000 is strictly for physical changes if required?
Yeah, so what we did not want to do is spend money on a consultant, $25,000 on a consultant to come in and tell us what to do. I can walk around Town Hall and tell you a number of things right off the bat we have to do. So this is actually to make the changes. We're going to do the self-assessment ourselves, and then this will be to make any changes we come up with as a result of that.
It'll turn you loose with a tape measure.
Yeah, trust me, I can be dangerous.
It's Deb Norman. When was the last time it was done, or has it ever been done?
It has been done. I would say the last one that I was able to find was probably 2014 or 15.
Okay, thanks. I was just wondering if we were going to get whacked with something really big or something.
Hi, Patty, it's Mike. Do we have an opportunity to apply for some sort of federal match funding with this? I imagine there are potentially some grants out there we could pursue, or are we investigating that? We can certainly look into that.
We can certainly, I'll take the action to see if there is something we could apply for, and I'll look into that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patty. Danielle, where we going?
Assessment?
Jennifer?
Yeah,
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. So Jennifer, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Sure, hopefully everyone can hear me okay.
Yep, we're hearing you just great, Jennifer.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be coming before you for the first time. I'll try not to take up too much of your time. I'm sure you have a long evening. The assessor's budget is pretty straightforward this year. We tried very hard, especially in light of the pandemic, to reduce where we could and keep things the same. There's one area, the biggest area that I would want to highlight is our database expenses. There is an increase there. Currently, our personal property software, we use Vision 8. So my understanding is about a couple of years ago, I believe we did it through the reval in 2017, but the Vision had a massive update from their 6.5 software to Vision 8. Now the real estate has been working very well, but for 2 years now, we've had a problem with the personal property and they haven't been able to resolve it. Vision is a company that services several different states, and Connecticut is very different in terms of personal property. So they've really had to try to tailor the software specifically to Stonington. In anticipation that they may not be able to get the software to work, we've looked into Quality Data, which is our billing software administrative package. They offer a personal property CAMA software. They do not charge for the software, but there is an annual software maintenance fee of $1,200 and a nominal conversion fee. if we do have to convert to using their software, there would be a lot of efficiency gained that would vastly outweigh the cost. It's seamless with our administrative program, and by virtue of that, there's a lot of savings that we would gain in terms of the time that it takes to process personal property declarations and the file at large. So in that aspect, it would be a very good addition to the assessor's office if we have to go that route. But that's the reason for the increase in the database expenses. I think we've pretty much were flat everywhere else, or had reductions. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
Any questions from board members?
So this is a total software package we're going to convert to?
Possibly. So right now, currently what's existed in the assessor's office is we've only had two softwares. We've had Vision, which we've used for the personal property appraisal and the real estate appraisal. Quality is what the assessors and tax office uses for our administrative package that deals with, the billing and everything on that side of it. Unfortunately, in the conversion to Vision 8, their personal property database has not worked. My understanding is we've still withheld the payment for them ever since the 17 reval. We still have not paid because it hasn't been working. So, we've had several discussions with Vision throughout the fall when I started, and trying to get a handle on what they need to prioritize, what needs to be fixed, and a timeline for that. They're hoping to get, I believe the first half of the changes that we've requested probably within the next month, and I don't have a timeline yet for the remaining work that needs to be done. But I'm very hesitant to believe that they're going to be able to get it working. We've by Marcia and the staff has been working with them for the past 2 years to get them to fix the software problems that are existing. We've had this year for the 2020 grand list, we will be using the old database for personal property because we cannot use the new one. And because of 6.5, they're phasing that out. They're not going to continue to provide support for that. So we really have to make a decision after we finalize the 2020 grand list on which avenue we're going to go, because we won't be able to continue using 6.5 after this year.
It would seem to me that's a critical item, because that impacts the revenue for the town.
Yep.
Sure.
And I'm very sensitive to that.
Yep, absolutely.
Roger, you got a comment?
Yeah, let me just jump in there on that too. Because of the difficulties that they've had to deal with Vision 8, we still run dual servers for the assessment product with the new database and one with the one that they still are using. So that's dual large servers, databases that we're backing up, that's taking up valuable storage space in our network.
I think it's time to fish or cut bait, Mr. Chairman.
It's already time to cut bait. Sorry.
I'm going to put that out there so that they know we're still maintaining two separate servers for the assessment department that run side by side. They have access to both of them, but it's not really efficient.
No, that's ridiculous.
Correct.
No.
We cannot take a spec tonight, but
No.
we got to put that on the agenda to get that fixed ASAP, where we can take an action.
Sure. So that's the biggest piece of our budget, is that if we were, I would, Vision is a great software company. Their real estate package is in almost they're in the majority of Connecticut towns. It's my first experience with the personal property system. It's not something that I've used in other towns that I've worked in. I can speak to Quality's personal property CAMA system, and it is a very good software. It's very reliable. Their support is very good. And as I said, they have certain aspects to their software because it is Connecticut specific. Quality does not work, at least at this time, in any other states, whereas Vision does. And the majority of Vision's clients for personal property are not Connecticut. And Massachusetts, Rhode Island, a lot of other New England towns, they do not assess personal property the way that we do here. So I think it's kind of, I don't have a lot of confidence that this is high on their priority list because the majority of their customers don't need what we're asking for. And we're essentially asking them to tailor their software specifically just for one town. Vision also doesn't break apart that in their costs. So whether we use their personal property software or not, they're going to charge us the same amount of money. So due to all those factors, I think that for the future of the assessor's office, for efficiencies, for cost savings, quality's personal property software is probably the best avenue to go. And that's where that additional $1,200 comes in the budget line item.
Perhaps, Mr. Chairman, you could ask the first selectman to have a proposal determined, ready for us to look and approve at a meeting when we put it on the agenda.
I think I can already state without polling the members of the board officially right now, but there is support to make sure we get this working in a manner that behests the town prior to the next budget cycle. So we would anticipate seeing something prior to the budget cycle and then including this in the budget cycle, which you've already done. So I think is that clear enough?
Good direction, John. Good direction.
Jim or Roger, if you could please refresh my brain because it only sometimes works. We were talking about with Marcia evaluating a different software package. Did that not go anywhere the last budget cycle?
Different.
I know that's different than this, but did we not move forward with that?
There was a plan a couple of years ago, it was a wCIP project, it was approved, and the goal at that time was to review all software that town was
Right, yeah.
Again, we need a project manager, dovetails back to, asking for another person to give me room to do these kind of things. It kind of fell flat because the building department and the assessment department moved forward with the permit tracking software, which is a great solution, and they're looking forward to it. They're almost ready to go live with it. But it kind of made the whole project a moot point because they moved forward with that, and
Okay.
that was supposed to dovetail back
So
to a very
this won't affect any of the other software programs, projects, and all that, and we're still looking overall with our new positions in IT towards a more integrated IT department, or IT solutions departmental-wide for all of Town Hall, and this would be a piece that would complement that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Macro rather than micro.
Okay, that was my question. Any other questions from board members? Nope. Anything else, Jennifer, or you good?
I think the only other thing would be for the SIP account, and typically what we do, if you want me to move on to that.
That'd be great.
Sure. So we typically budget $70,000 a year, and that's for our revaluation project. We've kept that the same. We will be going out to bid this spring for the 2022 project. So we did not make any changes to that line item either, but I'd be happy to field any questions about, reval or that account.
Physical or a statistical reval?
This is going to be a full measure and list for 2022. Yep.
Hi, it's Mike. Jennifer, just a quick question on that 70,000 that we set aside each year. I mean, for as long as I can remember, I think it's been 70,000 that we just.
Sure.
If you look at the projections for the next few fiscal years, which probably it would be good at some point in time though to really kind of understand what was the actual cost. And I know it only hits every 2 years, 5 years, I guess it's but
Absolutely.
Yeah. Has that been a low estimate, a high estimate? Can we refine that 70,000?
Possibly. So, my thoughts on reval are, there's no longer any different. They don't make any distinction in the statutes anymore between a statistical and a measure and list. Every reval is a statistical reval. The inspection requirement is actually something that is a separate requirement by the state. You have to certify to the state that you have attempted to get inside every single property within a 10-year period. the trends in reval across the state is really changing. It's moving away from these big fluctuations in projects where you have this, you know, project that might cost upwards of 350,000 to 400,000 because you're doing the fold, measure, and list all at once, and then 5 years later, maybe you're only spending about 125,000. What I'd really like to do for Stonington is, I think that we can stabilize that a little bit. We have to meet this inspection requirement for October 1st, 2022, but going forward, what I'd like to do is tailor it so that we have people out in the field breaking it apart across every reval. So for the 2027 reval, we'd bid out for 50% inspections. And then subsequently, to catch up to our 10-year cycle, 5 years from there, we would finish the remaining 50% inspections. To me, what that does is that stabilizes the costs. You know exactly what your project costs, you know, within a certain amount would kind of be for every project, because you're not saving this massive project up for 10 years, every 10 years. So I think we can do that. And I think doing that would allow us to kind of see what that cost would be. And it would be the same roughly every 5 years. There are also a lot of different things that we can do that I think can limit or lower our costs. The climate is changing a lot with the public. You know, it's very hard to get into properties, whether it's because most people are at work when we're out, whether it's because they don't want you on their property. I mean, it's getting harder and harder, and the statutes have enabled us to use different approaches that will kind of mitigate that. So we can use data mailers, and that can be a huge savings. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do to change how revals have typically been done in the past. And I think some of those changes would stabilize what you're seeing in terms of cost, and we would get a much better handle on how much we really do need to reserve every year. I think for the 2022 reval specifically, we have some outliers that we're just not sure how the companies are going to kind of respond to bids. With the pandemic, they've had to implement a lot of changes on their end to make sure that their data collectors are safe in the field. They've had to increase costs on their end, and some of those projects that they did in 2021, or even the projects that were effective for 2020, those contracts were finalized, probably about a year to 2 years before they began, and they had to eat a lot of those pandemic-related costs. They weren't foreseen. I don't know if their costs are going to increase because of that for the 2022 reval. That remains to be seen. So there are some outliers that we just won't know until we start getting the responses back.
Great, thanks. Yeah, it sounds like some interesting ideas or possibilities moving forward. So look forward to learning more down the road. Thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions? Thanks, Jennifer.
Absolutely. I hope you have a wonderful night.
You as well. Next, Finance Department. Jim, I guess this is you. Did we lose Jim?
Jim?
Jim, you're muted if you're on.
Well, we for Jim, I'm going to do the tax collector, which is in the...
I'm sorry. I apologize. Can you hear me now, Tim?
Yep, we got you now.
Okay, sorry. The Finance Department changes very little from year to year, except this year is an outlier where we had a decrease of $18,000 to salaries. That's due to two longtime employees and a third employee, two longtime employees leaving, retiring, and a third employee switching departments. We've hired 3 new staff, and each of those have come in at I guess starting rate salaries. Let's say that. And so that's right there. There's a decrease of $18,000. Did have an increase of $2,500 below under expenses. That's an increase of $1,000 to furniture and equipment and $1,000 to training and education. One of the staff who came in, one of the new employees, was actually the senior accountant. We were fortunate in finding somebody who actually does have some municipal experience, which is a rare animal. The other two staff, though very competent, have no municipal experience, so it's going to be a lift to get everybody trained up this year. So that's what the extra training education funds are for. And as far as furniture and equipment, I think the longest serving employee who left was here for 44 years. And I think some of the equipment she was working with was just as old. So it's time to give a couple of the pods a refresh, if you will, and give these new staff some new equipment to work with. Other than that, the only other line item I would draw your attention to is line 18, financial and technical and professional services. If you recall, last year, the Board of Finance graciously allocated that money in case we found ourselves in a position where we couldn't hire a senior accountant with the requisite experience. We were fortunate we didn't have that problem, so this $35,000 we won't be using in current year. However, I left it in the 21-22 budget in anticipation of possibly taking the money using the money, an opportunity to upgrade our GL system, maybe moving from a server-based system to an ASP. That's Munis. That's our general ledger software system. By going to an ASP, it would allow the town. It would be less maintenance for the town, easier on IT. I believe once you move to that model, it gives you some more functionality, ease of use. I hadn't anticipated this money being available, so I haven't explored it fully. Before the Board of Finance starts deliberations, I hope to do some more investigation if time allows to figure out if it'd be worth the while, the upgrade would be worthwhile. I think it's about a $17,000 to $20,000 fee, an annual fee that would increase going forward annually. However, I'm fully prepared to give this money back during deliberations if needed. But if the money is available, it might be a time to start moving into the 21st century by upgrading some of the system and even adding some more modules to our GL system for different departments. Our purchasing, maybe you getting the purchasing module and supercharging our accounts payable module. There's improvements that can be made all throughout the GL system, I believe, if funds were available. So that's the finance department. Any questions on those figures?
Jim, is Munis now used by the Board of Ed as well as the town?
No, I don't think so. I think they're using the parent company is Tyler. I believe they're using a different Tyler project, but not Munis. I can double check that.
Jim, you said the annual fee might be somewhere between 17 and 20, but is there a one-time implementation cost as well?
You know, I may be lying. I think now that I'm thinking about it, I haven't seen this in 6 months. I think maybe the annual fee might be $10,000 and the one-time implementation fee $7,000 to $10,000. I'd have to revisit that.
All right. Well, it sounds like maybe something you could get to us before
Yep.
we start deliberations. That'd be great.
Other questions from board members? Nope.
Roger.
Oh, Roger?
And just a quick dovetail back to the increase in my telecom budget for bandwidth on our internet. This is the reason for the ask. We have more departments now that are looking to do cloud services like the permit tracking software, like the online Munis solution that Jim Stoll was talking about. Without the increase in the bandwidth, these new processes don't come to fruition.
The pipe is too small.
Exactly.
Are we fiber optic in the town?
We are, but we are limited to a certain amount of bandwidth by our provider.
Oh,
Yeah.
so we have the physical capability, but the provider we got to pay the fee.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Other questions from board members? Nope.
Okay, then just moving
Okay.
down, Office of Treasurer. All we have, the only change there is we have the COLA for the treasurer's stipend, and then a $400 increase into expenses. That increase is due to, I'm hoping to replace the AP check printer this year. And with that is their $400 fee just for the signature stamp, if you will, for the check. So it's a one-time fee, shouldn't be repeated going forward. And then next in our department is Office of Tax Collector, and I believe the first selectwoman is going to speak on behalf of the tax collector for her budget.
I'm back. No, this is really straightforward. I'm happy to take any questions. Mainly what our esteemed tax collector wanted me to point out is the very small $500 increase in training is because OPM is about to mandate basically the equivalent of CEUs for staff. So not for her, but for the 2 other staff members who work in her office. She feels like that is very important. And otherwise, these are just contractual changes in salary.
Well, actually, this is Jimmy. This is Jim again.
Yep.
I'd just like to also note for the line 25 clerical salaries, similar to the town clerk's office, the deputy town clerk. One of the clerical positions in the Office of Tax Collector has been made a deputy tax collector. So that line is also going to go up another $3,300 due to that, which wasn't in the original clerical salaries line item. So that number will increase by 3,312 to a total of $118,281.
Plus 3,312?
Correct.
And what was the reason for this change in title?
So I can do this, Jim. So this was actually under previous administration decision, but because the charter was never opened, one of the biggest risks identified in the Chapman report, as well as I think a lot of just thoughts around these 2 positions, was that those 2 positions, town clerk, tax collector, being elected, there was a high risk for the town in terms of if they were not elected again, and that we had really no succession planning and no position in place that was essentially a deputy. And so under the previous administration, they changed those 2 positions and through collective bargaining unit agreements to deputy for both of those. So that was done 2+ years ago before Patty was here or I was here, under previous administrative services and previous first selectmen decisions to help offset some of the potential risks with those positions being elected. Any questions and Linda said she'll have an update by the next meeting in terms of tax collection rates, but it's looking good. Jim, you're back on.
Okay, now we're moving on to Board of Finance. Again, usually either there's very little going on there, or there's big things going on there. You'll note in department requests, I have a couple of things highlighted in yellow. I'll just touch on those. Those are the main things. The line 51 is the OPEB contribution for the year. I kept that the same as last year simply because we don't have the OPEB report for the end of 1920 yet, so I don't know if that contribution might be recommended to be increased or decreased. That's something I'm still waiting on, so I'm sure I'll have that information before we go to deliberations, but just to be safe, I think it was safe to put in $110,000. I doubt it'll fluctuate much from that figure. The other question I draw your attention to is 54, line 54. We have $500,000 budgeted in 2021 for COVID. I don't know if the Board of Finance wanted to carry that over into 21-22, so I left it in there just when you're looking at overall percentage rates, you're comparing apples to apples. So you guys can think about that and come deliberations, or you can tell me tonight if you want me to, yank it out for the next go around. Other than that, nothing much has changed there. Moving down to risk management, the only significant change there is I've budgeted an increase of $20,000 to property and liability insurance. I don't have those figures yet. They were supposed to get them to me today. They still haven't come. But I am definitely anticipating an increase in workers' comp, and we might have to also go out and buy a cyber policy this year, because within the property and liability package, if you will, from Kerma, they had $1 million, they called it, complimentary cyber package, which they're no longer carrying. So we're gonna have to go out to third parties and find a new cyber package. So I have our insurance consultant working on that as we speak, but I don't have an estimate yet of what that might be.
Jim, this is to protect against things like ransomware.
Exactly.
Okay. We probed. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Any questions regarding Board of Finance or in risk management, or any directives regarding Board of Finance?
I don't want to do any directives right now, Jim, because
Okay.
I don't have full board, so I'd rather get the full board. The ones who couldn't make it, I said that we would not do anything substantial. It would be presentations. So
Okay, I apologize.
We can look at that. Well, no, but what we can do is potentially add that to the agenda for the regular meeting next Wednesday for the Board of Finance, and
Okay.
take a look at it then.
Very good.
Any other questions on this section for Jim? Nope. Okay.
And there is no SIP items for either finance or tax collector. So I'll move on to debt service. As you're all aware, debt service is what it is. There won't be any adjustments, increases, or decreases to that. We have in the commentary, you see how our debt is structured over the next 20 years. And we also have a subschedule breaking it out between town, WPCA, and Board of Ed. And actually, I'm just going to call myself a liar. I'm going to correct myself. I was in communications with our financial advisor over the past couple of weeks, and we may have an opportunity to refund some debt early this spring. What that might mean to the 21-22 debt service is it's too early to speculate at this point, but come deliberations, or at least come budget time, I hope to have a solid idea of what, if any, we might be able to reduce to 21-22 debt service by. So that's a
glimmer of hope.
Okay, I'll keep you posted for that. Yeah, we have the 2013 issuance and the 2014 issuance may be able to be refinanced if rates stay the same over the next few months before we get to final budget. But I'll keep you posted on what that looks like.
That would be wonderful.
So unless there's any specific questions about what's going on with that, I think that'll be it for me.
Any other questions about debt service from any of the members?
Looking at the first big drop off is 25, 26.
All right. No, thank you, Jim.
All right, you're welcome.
Planning.
Here for support.
So Steve is also on the line from home. So if we have any questions, he's available as well. Obviously, I've only been with the town since May, so I may need his assistance at some moment. So,
Do you want to just, for the members that are at home, can you just identify yourself so that
Certainly.
they know
I'm sorry.
who you are, Sue? Sorry.
Susan Cullen, the Director of Economic and Community Development. And Keith Burns is on the line. He's the town planner, so he'd also be able to answer your questions as well from our department. So the only thing that you're going to notice that's really significantly different is actually a transfer. On line 19, the Community Rating System Floodplain Management Services, those used to be over in Public Works, and now they're being transferred over to our department. So the amount isn't different, the percentage isn't different, it's not a different amount of money. It just looks bad for us because it got transferred to our department. Now, the community rating system, I'll remind you, has to do with how we're managing the floodplain in town and how we're managing, this is actually has a direct relation to folks' floodplain insurance. So if we meet certain specifications of the flood rating program, then we're able to help our property owners out with discounts from the National Flood Insurance Program.
I'm very aware of that.
So that's really the only large change in our budget. Everything else is either very much the status quo or just a tiny increase due to contractual arrangements that were already there.
I do have a question.
Certainly.
On line 2.
Uh-huh.
I'm looking at it looks to me like a $7,828 increment. Can you tell me about that?
I think I'm going to have to defer to Danielle on that because that happened before I got here.
So, without going into too much detail, essentially, when I went to office, our previous director of planning has already left, and we were examining how best to shape that position and to input from the whole staff at the Department of Planning, as well as our previous director of planning, Jason. We came up with the idea that the new position should really be a director of economic and community development, Susan's new position, and it should really focus on what it had been focusing on, but update the job description and really focus that energy there. With that said, Keith got kind of rave reviews on what a great manager he was. He's been at the town for 16 years, and essentially we changed some things also in his job description, which was sitting with us. And so he took on new responsibilities that had previously been with the director of planning, and with that rejig of the two positions, that is why the town planner salary changed and went up. Basically, he took on basically management of the whole department.
Just one, I see increases like that. That's out of question.
Sorry, I'm doing your job.
Any other questions from members for Sue?
All right, Mike, just one quick question on the 35,000 transfer. Sorry, I missed which department was that coming from again?
That's actually coming from engineering, but it's not dollar for dollar. This is actually an increased amount. In prior years, we had the town engineer was receiving a stipend of $4,000 to act as the floodplain manager. That was, as you all recall, that was Scott. When he left, in the 2021 budget, they added $10,000 to that to make it a $14,000 stipend for 2021. Even with that increased incentive, nobody in town hall wanted to take that role on, to show you how difficult it was. So this $35,000 reflects is actually to have an outside vendor, engineering firm, take over the role as floodplain manager.
So that's service under the Department of Economic Development.
That's
Department of Planning.
That's a contracted
Planning.
service, the Department of Planning now.
And if you guys want to refresh your memory, Jim or Jill might know better, but it was either 1 or 2 Board of Finance meetings ago that we presented to you on this increase for this line item. So I'm sure Jill's minutes go into more detail and they're excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. No, okay. No. That was helpful. Right. Yeah. My recollection was there was an incremental cost. And I thought originally the statement was that was just a transfer. So I was trying to find the reconciling item. I didn't see it. Yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
Other questions from board members? No? We have SIP?
SIP.
SIP.
So I have quite a large number of SIP items. One of the surprises to me was that my SIP encompasses not only just the planning department, but many of the outside entities as well and commissions. So we have asked certain folks for information regarding their request, because obviously some of them didn't come directly from us.
So that board members are all on the same page. I believe we're on page 95 of the SIP.
Yes, we're on page 95. So I'll start with line number 80, the engineering and construction of new sidewalks. So this has to do with the Route 1 Pawcatuck sidewalk project. And the Board of Finance had already approved $130,000, and we had received a $600,000 grant from the Urban Act Fund from OPM this summer. And so we've already actually established 90% designing plans for this project. We've reached out personally to 28 property owners. I've spoken with 12 of them in my office, and we've had a public meeting so that anyone who was interested who wasn't a direct property owner could also ask questions about the project. And at the end of the month, the public comment period will close, and we will go into more of the construction design and establishment of those easements to be able to provide these sidewalks. So $600,000 of this money is actually grant money. $130,000 of it is money that you already actually approved back in January. And so it's only really the remainder that's outstanding. So the number actually looks a lot larger than it truly is. Line item 81, the Pawcatuck streetscape on Route 1. That's an older line item. Number 82, Pawcatuck streetscape Route 2.
Let me hang on. I'm gonna interrupt you for a second,
Sure.
too. Jim, we're showing in the budget the 943,500, but if we've already done the 730, isn't this not counting wise being budgeted correctly?
Subtracting the 600,000 grant and.
Unless we're showing an increase in revenue to offset costs.
Yeah. It looks like line 124 has an offset.
Right, so it's 343,000, which we're looking for 343,000. So my understanding was that was in addition to the 130 or 140,000 that was already appropriated, but I'll double check with Sue on that tomorrow.
Okay, so there might be an additional offset that's already.
Well,
we need
possibly,
clarification.
yeah.
943.5 is the total, and we've got 735 that we're looking to put and budget the 208,500.
Well, it might be different. Now I'm hearing it might be different. So let's get clarification as to how much is there.
Get a final number.
And then how much need be looked at. Okay. Thank you, Jim.
All
Thanks, Mike. I missed 124, so I appreciate that. All right, Sue, sorry.
Okay, so next I'm going to head down to the Plan of Conservation and Development. So the Plan of Conservation and Development is something that's required by Connecticut state law. We're required to be able to do that every 10 years. And so over the next 3 years, we need to start putting aside money to be prudent and to be able to start that work in a timely manner in about 2 years' time to be able to begin for that. The Plan of Conservation and Development is, of course, the town's long-term blueprint of what we want to see established within the town. It also gives a lot of credence to the inventory of what we have already, what utilities we have, what our goals are, overarching goals in a lot of different areas. So that's something that, maybe it isn't happening today or this moment, but we do want to start putting aside money for that because that will become very quickly required in the next few years. community tourism and wayfinding signs. So that was actually a much larger request earlier, and the EDC had a large discussion with our staff and with some of our volunteers about how we could maybe leverage some of the knowledge in town and some of our own resources to be able to maybe establish sort of a pilot project for that, as opposed to, you know, going out and doing the whole thing all at once.
Back to 84, would that be an outside contractor?
Yes, it will be. Absolutely. So number 86, the comprehensive plan update for the zoning regulations. Now, I have to say this is probably the #1 request from our Planning and Zoning Commission, our EDC, our staff. I think we're all on board with that. Our zoning regulations have been band-aided together for so long and added on to for so long that our staff is wasting copious amounts of time trying to interpret those regulations. Our Planning and Zoning Commission members who volunteer their time and who are having to, you know, clarify to applicant after applicant what they say. So we're wasting a ridiculous amount of time trying to interpret and clarify, because there are all these things that over time, they're you know, with all those little Band-Aids that we've put on to add on to these regulations, then it's no longer clear what you're actually trying to get at. The other thing that this is happening on the economic development side, which is very unfortunate, is we're not giving predictable outcomes. So predictable outcomes to a developer coming into town, they're going to look at us, they're going to look at Ledyard, they're going to look at Groton, and they're going to say, oh, we know we can do this, this, and this in this town. We think we can do this here. Oh, we probably can't. Maybe we can. But if it's not clear to them what they're going to be able to accomplish, they're just going to go next door. So we don't want to sell ourselves short. We have an awful lot to be grateful for here in our town, and we have an awful lot to offer people. And so by updating the zoning regulations, one of the best things that we can do for economic development is by giving people predictable outcomes of what they can expect if they come to town. They're not calling us constantly. I probably just myself get 2 calls a day about, I looked this up and I'm not really sure what I can do here or where I could do this in town, or do you even have any place for me to do this in town? This should be something people can literally look up on the internet, know in a snap if something is, you know, available or not available, know if it's possible or not possible, and move on. So it's very important to us. We have Mr. Philbrook on the line. I have Keith Brines on the line. And we also have a letter from the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Economic Development Commission. So there's a lot of support for this project, and it would benefit all of us.
Ms. Director Cullen.
Yes.
What's your #1 priority? Is this your number one priority?
This is my #1
of all
priority.
of us?
This affects everything we do.
Hi, Mike. Can I just ask the 150,000 estimate? What's that based on?
That's based on a couple different things. We got estimates from towns around us who've recently done this about what their bills actually came in at in the end. We also contacted 2 of the largest municipal consultants in Connecticut and asked them, for a town of our size and for the number of zones we have right now, what kind of an estimate we would have. So that's what that estimate is based on. We think that that's a pretty good estimate. This is a long process. It is a process that involves a lot of public engagement, and we certainly plan to engage the public in a big way for the zoning regulations. So we need to plan for that accordingly.
Thanks. Just while I'm on, Jim, can you mute? We're getting some feedback on here.
Oh, I apologize. Will do.
Okay, so number 88 is the permit tracking system. Oh, sorry, I need to skip to the next line. Number 89, climate change adaptation and mitigation program. So Rick Newton, who's the chairman of that task force, had given me some information, and I think that the first selectwoman has some information from him and also some additional words to say about that.
Yes, I decided after years of advocating, we're gonna take a totally different approach, so prepare to be excited. And we're just gonna give 3 very specific examples. So I think part of the reason the Climate Change Task Force has been so passionately advocating is they feel like we're just leaving potential money on the table. So we did more searching really over the past year at a number of different grants, and it can be really hard year to year to know what grants are out there. It constantly is changing. The indication, though, is between federal and state as well as private, we should see grants continually available. Again, every grant will be different, but a lot of the grants that we've seen require 25% local match. So just 3 quick examples to get your head thinking why we've asked. And again, the Climate Change Task Force asked for $500,000. The Board of Selectmen, with a heavy heart, but realizing the fiscal times we're in, reduced that to $50,000. We did do a $450,000 cut already. We strongly feel like the $50,000 should stay in there. And the 3 examples are in Hartford. With a grant for $91,000 that they leveraged, they were able to hire someone for a full year to basically further evaluate green infrastructure projects with a very specific focus on, are you allergic to this? To stormwater management. So they actually brought in someone to help their town engineer, which we know our town engineers very much benefit from stormwater management. I like to say is my favorite of the unfunded mandates from the state of Connecticut, but the MS4, as you guys are familiar with. So this is something we can and should be looking at. It also impacts our fishermen, our aquaculture, as the stormwater pollutes our waterways, particularly people who use fertilizers on their lawn. So again, that's one example for $91,000. Another one is a living shoreline in Stratford. So this one was a little over $350,000. It put together 2 different grants, again, requiring a local match. And to use a local example, we know for the Mystic River Boathouse Park site, we need a living shoreline. It's part of the plan. We don't have funding for it. It's not part of the brownfield funding that we're going to likely be getting as part of that. We'll need probably, again, this is an estimate, $200,000 to $300,000 additional money. So if we're looking at, on average, then a 25% grant, if we could get $75,000, there's our local grant. We already have $20,000 put away from past years, so the $50,000 gets us a lot closer. So that is my pitch for now on the climate change fund.
So we have 30 in our book, right?
I think 20, right?
And we have 30. I'm showing 30 on line 89.
That's what I see.
Oh, they have that. Oh, in future it's 50. Okay, so
Next year is 50.
Even more. Okay, we will reduce it to 30. I was obviously pitching 50 and reduced to 30. Oh, so that would give us 50 in total in that one.
Because you have 20 already seated,
20 already.
so that would get to the 50 in the line. Okay.
I prefer more. And I won't go into details that we've already gone into the past, such as rating agencies and real estate investors continuing to look at shoreline towns and how they're adapting to climate change and looking at their budget. But again, happy to take any questions.
Do we want to take questions there, or do you want to go through the rest of them?
You can go through that.
Okay, 93, the Stillmanville Mills environmental assessments for $200,000. So
that's next fiscal, right?
Oh,
yeah, we're both jumping. Yeah, that's $1 for now.
It's just $1.
That's a good one.
That's okay. We're working on it in many ways. We'll get to that later. Okay, so number 95, the inspection vehicle. So we have one inspection vehicle in the department, and it is 14 years old. And so why we have $6,000 is we would like to just plan for in the future. We know that it won't last forever. And we don't want to come back and ask for a brand new vehicle with having nothing saved. So this is, part of our sort of savings account of looking forward that we know we will need to eventually replace that vehicle. So if we could start to even put a little bit of money aside so that when that Ford Ranger does finally die a painful death, that we'll have something towards its replacement. Okay, number 96, file retention. So in our department, obviously Keith has been here for 16 years, and our department is being overrun with paper. So Keith has a lot of background information. He's been looking into different solutions in terms of our file retention. So I'm going to pass this back over to him and have him fill you in.
Yeah, and Patty too. Oh, there's Steve.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, as Susan said, I mean, our department is pretty much being overrun with paper files after decades of land use applications that keep coming into our department. You know, we really are in need of some sort of file management, some sort of scanning services. We've been looking into this with the help of Patty Bermel. And, you know, we've been looking at what other towns do and what other services there are out there. Starting to look at certain firms that could scan for us, but also can integrate what is scanned into the Laserfiche system that we use. Because it's not enough just to scan the stuff, which would basically have you end up with sort of a virtual mound of scanned documents. It needs to be organized and searchable, so it's better to be more efficient and better serves the public. Because we still do get people who come in on a regular basis and want to see the variance application for their property from 1973. So just storing this stuff off-site wouldn't really do it for the sake of efficiency. So what we're looking to do is to have some money for this and also use it as a bit of a pilot project for town hall, because our department isn't alone with the need to scan these documents. Municipal government will be at town hall for the next several decades at least. You know, we're committed to that building. So we need to adequately fit in that building. And a lot of space is just being wasted at town hall with paper, just with storage of old documents that can be better efficiently managed. So that's really the basis for this request. Now in the SIP, you know, we have 75,000 for this year coming up, 125,000 for the next year. We're pretty confident we won't need to spend that much, especially in the future years. But I think the 75,000 should be a good amount for this.
Do you guys want me, Patty, do you want to just share where a little bit, that, and just to clarify, that would be for, like he said, not, this isn't just for planning, this would be for a town-wide effort. So Patty, do you want to briefly share just the research you did?
Yeah, so we've been looking at two options for doing the scanning. One option is a third-party company, and I have a pretty good recommendation of a company that town of Westerly used that's in Rhode Island. We're going to meet with them ideally next week and get a better assessment. The benefit of using a third-party company is that it's quicker, it doesn't take many months. The quality of what you give them also has to be good, because they don't necessarily make judgments of what you give them, they scan what you give them. So we're looking at a third-party company. The other option, which other towns have done, is to hire a part-time temp, like a clerk, who's just going to come in and spend their entire life scanning. That will take many more months to do it that way. You have a little more control over it. But either way, it's really a long-term project to look at how we do this. And I think another phase of that from a town hall perspective is a lot of the documents we have in town hall, we are required legally to keep them, records retention, regulations, so they're not documents we can necessarily eliminate. So Keith's group has been great at wanting to pilot this and kind of move forward. They're the group most anxious to get going on this. So we'll have a better sense of the cost, but I've gotten some estimates from other towns, and doing third-party scanning companies is not inexpensive. So if you look at one department, it could potentially be, $20,000, $25,000 for one department. So we want to try to get more information, and then we'll decide whether it makes sense to go external or to hire a clerk who comes on board for, let's say, a year part-time and just scans all day long.
And the only thing I just want to add from really day one when I came in and tried to meet with all staff, This was one of the #1 concerns from the clerical staff, just the inefficiency. They were not by any means complaining, but just they care about the tax dollars very much and their time, and it's inefficient. A number of people, planning and building in particular, as well as finance, would have to go down 2 flights of stairs to the basement to go through the vault. They stand on this little ladder and go through all these old records. Things are stored in different areas and departments. So it's just completely inefficient every day to be doing this type of work in 2021.
Should I go on to the next number?
Any questions from board members?
That does seem like a wise thing to do. You can come up with one.
I guess, yeah, it's Mike, just one follow-up there. So I understand that, there's going to be a substantial initial cost to do the scanning all the current archive documents, but what is the maintenance plan moving forward? What's the software solution? It seems like, you could get a whole bunch of PDF files but then what you go from there? Like what's the new workflow changes or software solution that
Mike, Roger, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have the existing software in the Laserfiche. We just don't utilize it because we don't have the time to scan and appropriately file them, as well as going back, like we said, decades. So we already have the software in place. We're just not effectively using it.
Mike, this is Roger. Yeah, we have a program called Laserfiche, and it allows departments to scan into their own separate database that tags the item, whether it be a map or a photo or a document, a permit, and they can put it in wherever they need to be and then retrieve it quickly. It's not simply scanning into a PDF and throwing it into a file in a file server, which is really just getting lost in the mix anyway. It's a more robust piece of software that we maintain. Again, dovetailing back to me, myself, and I, somebody needs to take charge and kind of champion the document center so that way all departments can use this Laserfiche so they can get rid of this paper that they're drowning in.
Yeah.
Does it have to be scanned into that program?
Yes, it does.
So can a remote third-party group do that?
Yes, remotely, yes. We give them access. That's part of what we're building in Town Hall is a document scanning center with a specific workstation that is network connected that they have access to with licensing, with Laserfiche on it, so they can either sit there literally in the building or we can give them remote access. They can scan the documents, but we have to ship the documents to them. They have to scan them into the system remotely. We need the bandwidth for that.
That was going to be the next question.
All comes together.
Right.
Bandwidth is everything.
All together.
Big hockey cards. It's got to. I can't say anything other than that.
Probably be cheaper to get them to license a copy of the software and do it in their
Either that or contract them to come to the building, sit at the scanning station and do it right then and there. You can control the documents, the quality, you see them on the fly.
Yeah, problem is now you're burdening a machine there that is going to have wear and tear.
Purpose-built, purpose for that device, but every other computer we have in this organization that can be a one.
Scanners are a different beast than a computer, though. That's my experience.
The planning department just popped for a brand new, very high quality 11 by 17 page feed and flatbed scanner. We're doing the smaller devices. And of course, we have the new large format scanner that we're waiting to get delivered because we need to create a space big enough so you can put it in.
Yeah.
So we're making the right investments to scan the documents we need. We just need the space and the time and the,
Other questions? No. Right. Go ahead, Sue.
Okay, number 98, the circus lot acquisition and master plan for $10,000. So the wellhead lot from Westerly Water that we have the reverter laws on, we want to be able to take that reverter, buy it back. Westerly has said that they will actually work with us in a variety of ways to make it affordable for us to do that. Now, why that would be important to us isn't just to maintain the ownership of that lot, but there are lots around it that we could have a bigger impact on that whole section in Pawcatuck. So we could have, by putting those pieces together, that aggregate, it's one of those where the total is going to be more of the sum of than its parts. You can move all the development to the street on Route 2. We can take the whole back section and make it all open space, make it flood worthy so that we're not actually trying to develop in the floodplain back there. We can take care of our public safety issues. So by owning the different pieces and being able to put them together in that section of town, we can make it so that we can redevelop that area in an appropriate manner on a bunch of different levels. And so this is really that first step towards that, of getting that acquisition back. Now, we've done a phase 1 assessment of the environmental feasibility of that. And so the phase 1 was completely clear. The EDC actually spent some of their own money out of their own account to do some smaller phase 2 type of testing. And so we want to be able to move forward with this project, but without money, we can't do that. And so that's really what this is all about.
The location of that lot, what's precise, that's off of Route 2, correct?
So there are 3 parcels right off of Route 2 that go down to the river, and they're all adjacent to the fire department. And so if we were able to acquire those pieces and put them together and sort of reconfigure them or redevelop them in a different way, I think we would be much more efficient. We would be able to reap some tax dollars back out of them on the front side of Route 2, where it would be appropriate to develop. And then on the back side, where it's more appropriate to conserve, then we can do that as well. And certainly with all of our other issues in terms of flooding.
That's part of the old Dow lot, right?
Yeah.
Then we have 2 long vacant lots that are desperate for the PV5 usage, but we think the circuit lot could be a key missing piece for this.
Absolutely. So the next 102, the contribution to the open space acquisition fund. So we are hopeful that there will be actually a deal later this year that is going to empty our open space coffers. And so this would be the beginning of refilling those coffers. Most of the open space contributions in Connecticut, there's tons of grant money out there for it, but you always have to have that leverage of having some of your own skin in the game. And so this is going to be that skin back in for that, because we're very hopeful of some things that are not out in the public venue yet, but that are going on, that we're going to be able to acquire a large amount of open space, and that is going to empty our pockets for open space acquisition this year.
I'm on your March agenda.
Yes, you are.
There you go.
You are the March agenda.
Okay, you got it. So,
Don't we get contributions to that open space fund from real estate transactions?
Yes, and Keith could talk more to this, but our understanding is that has significantly declined in the past years because there's just less of that large-scale development happening.
I can talk about that too. So there used to be there was a fee in lieu of open space, and I think Keith will agree with me. If it's different than I'm guessing, then just pipe right in, Keith. But you know, at the beginning when fee in lieu of open space came to be about, I think there was a lot more development going on in terms of larger subdivisions and things that were going on to actually contribute to that fund. And I think what Keith's seen is that's dropped off significantly. So we don't really have a huge pipeline of money coming in from that right now. Keith, is that different than what you're seeing?
That's right. I mean, we do have an existing account that is fed by those fee in lieu of open space payments, and those are a result of subdivisions. And we've had, since the recession really back in 2007 and 8, we haven't had as many large subdivisions that pay a lot into that coffer. So we're not getting as much in there. So the thought was with this is that the town should basically fund this on its own and have this growing pot of open space money, mainly for matches for these grants that are out there.
Okay, so the last one is number 105, which is the electrical vehicle charging station, which is also a request through the Climate Change Task Force. But as a way of a little bit of backstory, there's some interesting things going on in the state of Connecticut right now. A lot of the money through the Volkswagen diesel emissions scam, that scandal that went on a few years back, A lot of that money is now being distributed out to the states for programs like this for electrical vehicles. And actually, just over the last few days, we've seen a whole bunch of information come in that we haven't even had a good chance to completely review about the electrical vehicle charging stations. Back in 2015 and 2016, the DEEP in Connecticut actually had some fairly nice grant programs. I was involved in a couple of them where acquisitions were made of equipment and vehicles to a great efficiency, both environmentally and monetarily. But we will be reviewing those to see if any of those programs will apply to us. But even a small amount of money might help us to leverage a larger amount of money because there are matches, involved in that grant program as well.
Any questions from members for? No?
Hi, it's Mike. I do have a few on, actually, back on some of the other lines. We went through for a couple fairly quickly, so I just wanted to check a few things. So back on line 89, I certainly sense the passion around the climate change fund, but I'm curious as to why that's classified as an A priority. I mean, my understanding is the A priorities, already have a commitment or an obligation. Why is that an A?
Because the 10,000 for the past 2 years consistently, but it's not an obligation to fund it at that level, but it's an A just because there's been 2 years of consistent funding.
Okay. All right, thanks. And then on line 98, is there an expiration date on the option to acquire the circus lot?
No, there's not.
All right. And then 102, I'm just curious, what's the current balance in the open space fund? Do we know?
So the current balance, Jim can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's just a hair over 300,000. So like I said, I'll be coming before you the first week of March to discuss a really exciting potential for the town, but again would require a local funding kind of option in order to leverage both state or federal, and then also private institutions that would still need to come in. So yeah, like Sue said, the idea is with this potential massive conservation effort that could happen for the town, we would potentially need to use everything that's in there or close to everything that's in there. So that's part of the plug for trying to start rebuilding it, hopefully. And just to say, like when these things happen and they happen pretty quickly, I can personally say I would not have felt confident pursuing this option that came before us if I didn't know that money was there. That was the only reason I was confident enough to pursue these talks. So I really can't say enough whether it's this administration or future ones down years from now when we build that up. It really is helpful to have that money in a fund.
And Michael, to answer your question, there's actually $438,000 in that fund right now.
But we also have 57-some thousand already earmarked for another conservation that you guys agreed to previously. Spending all the money.
Okay, so 438 minus 57. Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's all,
Yeah.
right?
Do you like our move?
I believe that is all for general government and general government SIP requests. The only other item on the agenda is the budget calendar, possible discussion of hearing meeting dates. Jim, is there anything we need to discuss on that?
No revisions since revision 3 that went out last week. So unless anybody has any qualms or issues with that.
No, I think maybe the only thing we ought to do, Jim, is just update, I hate to say it, to revision 4, but to make sure we note the change of venue to this PD room and the starting time at 7:15.
That should be reflected in version 3.
Is that in revision 3? Okay.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Okay, wonderful.
They've got 7 o'clock.
That one is the old one. That is not,
Old version 3?
that's, I think, what revision is in front of our book.
Hi, this is Jill, and I do believe that version 3 has the starting time at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking at, it says version 3, so we're gonna issue a corrected version 4 with the right time.
Wait, which one do you have, Glenn?
I have, it says V3, and it says 7 o'clock.
Version 3 was the last one.
Okay.
Yep, version 3 was the last one, and I do believe it shows 7 o'clock. So we can make a version 4 with 7:15.
Okay.
And that's what I'd be trading the meetings off of.
Or we can go to 7 o'clock. I'll figure it out. Why don't we do
Okay.
that, Jill? Let's stay with 7 o'clock. Let's make sure the agendas reflect 7 o'clock moving forward so that they're good, because that's all I did is I went to the website for the town and made sure what time I was going off of. So
Okay, sounds good.
we can do that. I think we'll need those 15 minutes. Absent of that, we have no more business before the board. We will adjourn.
Adjourn.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate all your